Hello my friends, welcome to Talk to Me Tuesday for Tuesday, September 4th, 2018. This is Jennifer. I am more than delighted to come to you today from my backyard. As you can see, my Talk to Me Tuesday swap block quilt is complete. The beautiful colored blocks that you see here, 3 of each of these sets were swap blocks, and then I added one of my own to make them a complete pattern. All of the background stuff, all of it came from my stash. So all of these scrappy neutrals, like that all came from my stash. The only thing I purchased for this was the back. My air conditioner just came on and it's really loud outside, so I'm sorry for that, but I'm just gonna keep going. So the back and the binding I did purchase, but I bought those from Thousands of Bolts, which is my favorite inexpensive quilt store quality fabric website. I got end of bolt for 2 different pieces of Robert Kaufman fabric, and they were $4.99 a yard. Guys, I'm so in love with this quilt. I practiced my swirls, as you know, on some Linus quilts first, and then I did a swirl all over. I quilt on a Juki. It's a T2010Q, I think. It's just a sewing machine. It's just a straight stitch sewing machine that has a slightly longer neck. It's not even quite a mid-arm, but I quilt with it on a frame, so it sits on the frame. And the reason I'm explaining this is I had a lot of questions about what I meant when I said quilt frame. So I have a Grace frame that is 12 feet long. It's in my garage, and there's nowhere else in my house to put it, so it's in my garage. It's 12 feet long. I have my Juki sewing machine sitting on a little tray that has handlebars on the machine, and I will put a link to Grace so that you can have a look at one of their videos where they have a very similar setup. And then I drive the sewing machine with the handlebars, and there's a little on-off switch that I can turn on or off, or I can hold the pulse button, which is what I normally do because when I let go of it, it stops sewing. All I have is the length from my needle to, you know, the main part of the sewing machine. So like the opening, the harp of the sewing machine, that's all I've got to work with. But in that 8 inches, as long as I am careful, I can quilt all the way across. And what I found is that because of the limitations of the size of the machine, I do much better with repeat designs. So like swirls are great. Meander is one of my favorites, especially for charity quilts. Anything that is a repeat is a lot easier to do because you can't do like a whole 12-inch block at one time because the throat of the machine just isn't wide enough to do that. So I'm quilting on my home machine, but I'm moving it like a long arm. It isn't actually a long arm machine. And would I like to have a long arm? I would love to have one, but like I said, my frame lives in my garage. There's no climate control in there. I have a dehumidifier and an oscillating fan. So I don't want to put a super expensive machine in the garage. So maybe someday I'll have a place to put one, but until then, I am really happy with my Juki setup. It's treated me really well so far. And I love having the frame because I can stretch the whole thing out and then you work a row at a time, just like a long arm. It's just a smaller sewing machine. I hope that answers the questions that I have received, there have actually been quite a few recently. And guys, I'm so in love with this quilt. I had a great time quilting it. It took me a total of about 5, maybe 6 hours to quilt. I used 20 bobbins. So the Juki bobbin's a little bigger than like a home sewing machine bobbin, not quite as big as a long arm, but I still used 20 bobbins. I quilted all over with like an ochre, just off-white. I don't remember the name of the thread color, but it's just an off-white thread color, and sort of an ecru. And see how many different names for off-white I can come up with. Anyway, I quilted with that all over, front and back. I used the same color, and I just put my headphones on and listened to an audiobook and just quilted. And every time I finished a bobbin, I would go sit down for like 5 minutes, have some water to drink, and then I would go back and do it again. The sitting down is really because, as you guys probably know, I have feet problems. So if I'm on my feet continuously for too long, it can cause me to have a couple of really bad days. So I have to be really cognizant of not standing up for too long. So I quilt for, you know, however long a bobbin is, which in this case, it was about 1 row and about a block across. So I'd get a whole way across and then a little bit of a block, and then I would go take a break. And doing that, it was 5 or 6 hours of quilting, which was not bad considering this is 72 by 84. So anyway, thank you guys, all of the Talk to Me Tuesdayers who swapped. Thank you so much for participating this year. This is the first block swap we've ever done. I've already kind of come up with an idea for next year. I don't think we're gonna make blocks next year, but I do think I have a really fun idea that hopefully you guys will like, that will be fabric related. So I will probably let the Talk to Me Tuesdayers know in like November, so we can do signups in November, December, and then we'll swap in like the first half of next year. So we will do something next year. I don't think it'll be a block swap, but we will be swapping something that involves fabric. I do want to show you guys the back. It is 2 different fabrics from the same fabric line. I bought the end of 2 different bolts in order to have enough to do this, and I still have a yard left over, so this fabric is so pretty, I'm sure I'll come up with something else to do with it. One is orange and one is kind of red. It's a little more coral than red, and I just sewed those together. It was 3 yards side by side, sewed them together, and then put that on my frame and just proceeded to swirl away. And then I used the corally red for the binding as well. Also, I designed a quilt label for this quilt, and it is machine embroidered. I made one for myself and I made one for Jules. If you have an embroidery machine and you would like this design, let me know what format you need for your machine and I will email it to you. And this is for Talk to Me Tuesdayers, obviously, because if you didn't participate in this quilt swap, then you don't need the quilt label. If you did participate and you don't have your own embroidery machine but you would like a label, just let me know and I will be happy to make one for you. What I did for Jules is I actually swapped my name and her name so that her name was at the top. So I will do the same thing for you so that your name will be at the top, so that it's, you know, it's your quilt. So I put your name at the top, and then the name of everyone else who participated is on there as well. So that is going to be it for me. You guys have a wonderful week. You have a crafty week, and I'll see you next week. Bye.